Hi, and welcome to the Naked Truth channel, whether you're watching this on Facebook or maybe YouTube. Hey, maybe you're even watching a recording a little bit later on. That's cool too. Really great to have you watching. My name's Ian Henderson. I am the founder of The Naked Truth, and I'm joined today in this live stream with katyy.patyy. Now, you may never have heard of her because, to be honest, unless you're on TikTok or Instagram, then you maybe haven't heard of her, but on those channels, she's huge. With over 200,000 followers on TikTok, 7 million likes, something like that. This is a girl who is talking about, believe it or not, porn and God and sex and relationships and loads, as you can see, hundreds of thousands of young people are listening. And so we just wanted to grab some time with katyy to find out what she is saying, what she's thinking, what some of those young people that she is talking to are saying and thinking as well. So you join us as we do that. katyy, thank you so much for spending a bit of time and joining us on this live stream. Really great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. Like, so excited.
Great. So we've got a little bit of a delay on the stream. Yeah, there might be a few pauses between me asking a question and katyy answering, but you know, we're used to that. We've got the Olympics going on. That seems to be happening all the time on TV at the moment. katyy, just tell us a little bit before I ask you some kind of questions. You're not based in the UK, for example, so where are you sitting right now? I mean, that looks like maybe your bedroom, but where are you in the world? And yeah, where are you joining us from?
I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, so quite far from the UK. Very cold usually, but right now it's like we're in the summer, so it's kind of hot, which is kind of nice. But yeah, most people expect me to be from America, but no, plot twist, from the good old Canada.
Amazing. And katyy, I mean, how long have you? I've mentioned obviously your influence on things like TikTok and Instagram stuff. How long have you been kind of posting content on those channels?
Yeah, I started March 26th. March 26th, 2020. So I've been doing it for like a year and a half, a bit. I just started on TikTok, and then I made my way to like Instagram, and then made my way to YouTube, and then yeah, it's been about a year and a half so far. Yeah.
Amazing. And I mean, the pandemic had just started, I guess, around March time. So pretty much everything you've been doing has been during that time, and you've built this big following of people who are kind of listening to some of the stuff that you're saying. And the reason I heard of you was actually because my daughter, who's 17-year-old, she kind of knows what I do for a living. You know, I run a porn charity. So she was like, oh, God, you need to look at some of these TikToks from this lady called katyy, who's just posting a lot about porn and sex and God, because my daughter's a Christian, as am I. So she was like, she's great. Stuff she's saying is great. So why did you pick that niche, that thing to talk about on TikTok? I mean, porn and sex. Why did you start there?
Yeah, definitely not a very common conversation, but at the beginning, like when I started TikTok, like I did not mention sex, did not mention porn. Like I more just talked about like just God and stuff. But I kind of posted this one TikTok, and it was me opening up a little bit about how I struggled with like lust. And then in the comment section, it was a whole bunch of girls and a whole bunch of people being like, I struggle with that too. Like I have struggled with this behind the scenes for a while now. Like, can you help me out? And then and like that TikTok blew up. I think it got like 1 million views or something. And the comment section was flooded with that. So I was like, wow, like this is a conversation that's not usually talked about. And so then slowly, like I became more open about it. I wasn't just like right out open about it, but then the Lord, I'm a Christian too, so I think the Lord really gave me like confidence and boldness in that. And so I just started opening up that conversation more. And then when I actually did like come out and say like I had a porn addiction for 10 years, that one blew up and it was like, I need help. How did you do it? Blah, 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 all this. And I was like, okay, this is a conversation that actually like people are needing to talk about and wanting to talk about. So I'm going to open up that conversation. And so then I just started posting more. And yeah, that's kind of what led me to here to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about your story then. I mean, how old you were, and just your first exposure to pornography, and perhaps the impact it made on you, and the way it impacted and influenced you in your life. Tell us a little bit about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I was exposed to porn when I was 8, and a lot of people are like, "Wow, you were so young, like you were 8." And I like agree, I was very young, but also like when you think about it, like the internet, like you look up one bad word when you're a little kid, you just hear like one bad word and you look it up and it just like leads you down a rabbit trail. And that's what I a lot of tell parents, like even my friends' parents, like who have kids. I'm like, it's easy, it's accessible. Like you look up one word and it's there. And so that it kind of just started as like an innocent curiosity when I was 8, not knowing like what the damage would be, not knowing what it even was, like not knowing like even what sex was. But I was watching this, and just like as I grew up, I thought like it, oh, I didn't have to do it, like, oh, I didn't have to watch it. But I always came back to it. It was like a crutch, and it was always like it became suddenly like a need for my self-worth, a need for validation, a need in my sadness. And like people don't understand that, like when I talk about it, like I get a lot of like hate comments being like, oh yeah, right, like it's just porn, whatever. But it's not just porn. Like that's what a lot of society says, and a lot of like, especially with my age people, like it's such a, oh, it's just porn. But literally they know like in the moment, yeah, you might not realize the side effects, but down the road and like the long-term side effects like of porn, like they're pretty damaging. And I like experienced porn addiction for like, I would say 10 years from when I was 18, or till I was 18. I'm 20 now, so I haven't watched it since then. But I feel like I still like, even though I have come to Christ, even though I haven't watched it in almost 2 years, even though I haven't done that, I still feel like the baggage of that weight of the 10 years. And I would say how I feel that is in like insecurity, like definitely in relationships now. I feel like I have to do certain things in order for people to love me or in order for people to stay. I also like body image wise is like, that's what beauty looks like. That's what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah.
And even with sex, like when I was having sex, because I became a Christian like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. When I was having sex, that was also so damaging to my self-worth, because that's how I thought people would stay. That's how much I thought I was worth. I treated people like an object. It wasn't just me being treated as an object. I viewed other boys and guys as objects, and like a transaction, that it was like, this is what I can get out of you. This is all it's worth. Like almost the beauty of like sex and like nakedness and that intimacy, like that beauty was completely taken away from me. And so that's kind of been my journey that I'm still like walking through. And I don't think, like, I think you'll always kind of hold that, like still need healing from that, because it was such a big part of my life. Like it was my whole like teen years and my half of my childhood that was kind of like the innocence was kind of like taken away from me.
Katie, you've said a little bit about parents and things like that. I mean, I wonder, was this the sort of thing you could have talked to your parents about? Did you have a household where it was open and, you know, as you say, it wasn't a Christian household? I don't think so. Were people openly talking about things like porn and sex, or was it still very taboo? And, yeah, did you have those kind of conversations whilst this was all going on?
I would say, like, my parents definitely did catch me a couple times and sit me down and be like, "This isn't right, like, you're too young for this." Um,
Yeah.
and in my house, like, sex was talked about, but obviously not in a Christian perspective, so it was like, "Just do it with someone you love, make sure you're using protection, don't" like, it was an open conversation of, like, that, but we never really sat down and talked about, like, porn and how, like, the effects of it and, like, why you shouldn't do it. It was more just like, "Don't do it until you're older," or,
Yeah.
like, "Don't do it until that," and so that was kinda my experience with, and even, like, me now being super open about porn and talking about it, like, my parents kinda avoid that conversation because,
I
like,
was going
I
to
get
ask
it, like, you're
what kind, how do they feel about the 7 million likes
Yeah,
about
I
porn?
definitely I definitely hid it from my I didn't hide it from my parents, I just didn't make a big deal about it to my parents, like, when I was beginning, and my little brother, who's 15 actually now, he was 14 back then, he told my parents that, "Oh my gosh, Katie's talking about porn on the internet," and all this, and so their first thought was, like, "She's in porn?" And then I'm like, "No, no, no, she's talking about porn," and then they're like, "Okay, that's a little better," but then
Yeah.
they kind of, like, weren't the most supportive. They like, I get it. Like, you want to protect your child. You don't like for future jobs, for future things. Like, I get why they wanted me to
Sure.
like stop doing it. But that's when I kind of had to wrestle with like in a Christian perspective, like when you honor your mother and father, but also when you do something that the Lord's calling you to do. And I had to wrestle with that for a bit. But at the beginning, my parents were not very supportive. But now that they have seen like me like flourish in something and actually love something and be passionate about talking about something and fully doing it,
Mm.
they've been a little bit more supportive than the beginning. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth saying that it is a really tricky subject for any parent to have. You know,
Mhm.
how do you talk about porn with your teenagers? And Naked Truth, we've got some resources for that. So if you want to go to our website, and there's a kind of tab that will say kind of advice for parents, definitely worth taking a look at some of that stuff. And you know, it doesn't matter whether you've got faith or no faith. These are important conversations you want to be having with teenagers. So make sure you do take a look at that. I mean, Kate, tell us a little bit about maybe some of the feedback then you do get from, you know, the comments or
Mhm.
whatever. And it's also worth saying, if you're watching this live and you just want to put in a comment or ask a question of Katie, we can see those, so we can get to some of those and answer some of your live questions if you've got a question or a comment you want to make. But yeah, when you're kind of streaming and posting stuff and you've got teenagers saying things, you've mentioned some of the haters or maybe the people who just don't get it. Maybe they're not hating on
Mhm.
you, but what's the sort of thing that teenagers are saying to you? What are the struggles that they're coming to you with?
A lot of the comments, like, there's probably like I would say like 75% are like good comments or like they want help or they like know that it's not good and they want help from that. And then the other 25% would be like it's not that big a deal. Stop making a big deal about it. Like, this is
Mm,
stupid, like kind of things like that. But I would say for like the teenagers that like want help and like that, they they say a lot of like, how did you do it? Like, how did you stop? Or like, what is the damage of it? Like, a lot of people actually want to know what the damage of it is because right now they're either in the middle of it and they don't know the long term damage of it, or they're wrestling with like struggling with it, and so or they have come out of it and they're starting to see like the long-term effects on their relationships, their friendships, their even with their family, like stuff like that. And
mm,
so I get thousands of DMs, like, well, hundreds of DMs like every day on my Instagram, and not I would say 90% of them are girls who have never had that open conversation, whether that's with their parents, with their church, with their like friends, girls struggling with
sure.
it, saying all I've and like this is nobody's fault, but all that's talked about is with boys. So how do I
Mm,
do this? Like because obviously I'm not a boy. I struggle differently than boys, but I still struggle with porn. So how do I do that? And so I get a lot from girls being like, how do I even open this conversation? How do I talk about it with my friends? How do I like, what are boundaries? Like, how do I stop it? Like, it's kind of like a hidden monster almost, because you don't know who's watching it because it's behind closed doors. And so you don't know who's struggling with it. And so, yeah, but I would feel for like the hate comments, or not even the hate comments, just the not getting it comments, is they're so used to it, whether that's because in high school, like the guys talk about it with the guys, or I was talking to my friend the other day and he was talking about how when he was in hockey, they used to do this like question around the circle but while they're stretching. And one of the questions was, who's your favorite porn star? And he was like a 15-year-old boy at that point. And so it's just so normalized in our society and so normalized within our culture and in high school and in young adults that it's like, it's no big deal. It's just a release. It's just whatever. And so, yeah.
Katie, there was a survey here in the UK that was recently published where it said 1 in 3 college students, so it's kind of like 19-year-olds, were saying that they'd learned more from porn than from any formal education, you know, any kind of sex ed stuff or anything in school. What do you think? What do you think are the lessons then that may not be good lessons that porn is teaching, particularly young girls, like you said, and you've got your own perspective on that as a young woman who used porn, but also as you're hearing from so many young girls, what are the lessons that porn is teaching?
I think pertaining to like sex and stuff is that like a big one for me was there's no disappointment. Like in sex, it's all like, or in porn, it's all fake and it's all like lots of stuff, like
amazing.
It's performance. Yeah, it looks amazing. It's performance and stuff like that. And so then when you have sex and it doesn't work, or when it's not like porn, or you don't look like her, or you don't look like him, or our bodies don't look like that, it becomes very disappointing and it becomes very like, I'm not good enough. Like, and also like when you think about it, when your other person is like watching porn and you're watching porn, you both have these unrealistic expectations for each other. And so that just leads you like to have like this relationship that's not very healthy and not very good, because you're putting expectations on a person that they can never fulfill. And I also think that it teaches almost like a transactional form of like love, because when you're not taught what sex actually properly is supposed to be, which most people would say like it's with someone that you love, or it's like this close bond and this intimate thing, when you're taught it from a porn side of like, it's not love, like this is just a transactional thing, you start to view people as a transaction, whether that is with sex, whether that is with attention, whether that is with like liking someone, or like relationships in general. It's a transactional way to view humans, and it's pretty terrible. It's pretty terrible, and I still struggle with that, as I kind of mentioned. But I think it teaches us a lot of like falsehoods about worth, about love, about human beings. And also, you don't know the person that you're watching. Like, you don't know their heart. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know like anything about them yet. You're seeing them in the most intimate way, and you're seeing them naked and in the most exposed way, yet you know nothing about them. And so just pretty dangerous when you think about that in that way of like, yeah.
Do you think, Katie, just from what you've heard from your followers and things, that there is a pressure to try and act out what people are seeing on porn? Are people talking about that pressure? I mean, again, I know as an adult, as a parent, you know, I can be worried about that. You know, while my teenagers that I care about, whoever they might be, family and friends, are they are they being pressured by this porn? But then lots of teenagers go, oh, it's no big deal. We know it's fake. But what are you hearing? I mean, do you feel there is a difficulty in separating the fakeness of porn with the pressure of what they should look like, you mentioned, but also what they should do?
Yeah, I definitely don't think a lot of people realize it's fake. Like, I personally didn't when I was in it. I thought that's what sex was, and like, why really would you? Like, because there's so, like, when you think, like, there's so much porn, so much, and like, I think that a lot of people can't separate that it is fake and that this isn't what it's supposed to be like, or this isn't usually how it's supposed to be like, and also, like, when I was there, and when I was back then, I had that pressure to, like, this is how it's supposed to be. Doesn't matter if I'm comfortable. Doesn't matter if, like, I am, like, okay with this. It's what is gonna make someone stay. It's gonna what's like make someone like pleased. Like, it's gonna help the other person out, and this is all I know about it. And so, like, I didn't separate that fakeness. I thought this is what it's supposed to be like. And then when it wasn't like that, then it just goes like, your worth sucks. You go in this deep, like, overthinking of, like, I'm not good enough, like, all this. But definitely in my comment section too, when I post videos about, like, how porn is fake or how that's not what it's supposed to be like, people are like, you get the bad comments of, like, oh, it just wasn't like that for you, or like just things like that. But I think it is hard for people to separate that it is actually fake, because it doesn't look fake all the time too. So
yeah. I mean, got a question here, and again, just want to remind people, if they're watching live, do feel free to ask any questions or put any comments, because we can see those. Someone's just asking, what would you say to a non-Christian young person who maybe doesn't share your ideas about the sacredness of sex and sexuality? Should they still care about the effects of porn? And I guess one of the things you just talked about is that, if it's affecting how you feel about yourself, and what porn is kind of shaping around your ideas of what is normal sex, that's probably a reason. But have you got other reasons, other things you would say to non-Christians about why you think porn is just unhelpful to them?
I think not even in a Christian's perspective, because I wasn't Christian while doing all this. I think it just, like, teaches you a bad way to look at, like, humans, and, like, whether you're religious or not, like, we all live in the same earth, we all breathe the same air, we all like, but when you view someone as, like, a transaction or something you can get out of them, it just becomes manipulation, and it becomes toxic, and everyone wants a healthy relationship. Everyone wants a healthy, like, I don't think there's one, like, somebody that's like, I want a toxic relationship. Like, I want to, like, view this person as a transaction. I want to see what I can get out of this person. And if you do, that's pretty unhealthy. And so from a non-Christian standpoint, is like, it's not so much that, like, the sacredness of sex, it's more just the healthiness of a relationship and healthiness of that sex life within wherever you're practicing your sex life. And so, kind of just, like, the unhealthy nature of it, of like, that, like, comes into your life from watching porn is super terrible.
I know also, and lots of people watching perhaps will know this, but there's also lots of research just around the way that porn affects us physically as well as emotionally, and mental health. There is our physical health that gets affected, and for some, porn use, particularly online porn use, can lead to dependency and addiction, and that it affects us physically as well as those things you've been mentioning. I wonder, it's interesting, isn't it, what you were just saying, just remind me, sometimes one of the things that we talk about in schools is how I think lots of young people, and maybe not just young people, let's be honest, adults too, think watching porn is it's like a manual, it's going to give me tips. I'm going to be a better lover because I've been watching some porn. And yet what you're saying is actually, essentially, porn makes us worse lovers, because we become conditioned to be quite selfish, actually. You know, porn conditions us to only sort of like be satisfied when we get exactly what we want, because that's what porn does. It, you know, it causes you to keep looking and keep until you find exactly what you're looking for, which does not work well in relationships and in reality, because sex is about something that's much more giving than getting. You know, it's this shared experience, and so if you've been conditioned by just consuming and getting what turns you on, you're going to be less able perhaps to be a good lover than rather than better at being a lover, which is, I think, a bit of an oxymoron that we kind of discover. Katie, I'd love to ask you a little bit about your faith just as we start to come to the end of this interview, because it's been a big part of why you quit porn and that sort of stuff. And we're going to be doing an event in September called the P Word Conference, that is for churches and church leaders, trying to help people of faith think about and talk about porn in a more effective way, an intentional way. But tell us a little bit about your journey first. I mean, you said you've been a Christian for a couple of years. I mean, what difference did... Well, first of all, tell us, how do you become a Christian? And then what difference has that made on your kind of journey with porn and sex and relationships?
Yeah. I kind of went to youth group growing up. And so I I was involved in church, and I kind of knew who God was, but I never would say that I made my faith my own. I would never say I more say I liked the community and I liked the boys. So that's why I stayed in church. Sure. And so after I got out of youth group, I took a year off, and during that year off, I just kind of didn't even go to church and care. I just went to the bars. I slept around. I did a lot of the normal young adult things, because here when you're 18, you're allowed to go to the bars. And so you just did the normal young adult thing. It was normal. Any unbeliever, I did whatever. And so I had gotten into this relationship, which this relationship kind of showed me the effects of porn in itself. Was it was a very, very toxic relationship. It just was very dependent on performance in the bedroom. It was very dependent on that. And it was also dependent, I would use him as a transaction, he would use me as a transaction. It just was not healthy. There's a lot of cheating involved, and there was a lot of just always going back to each other for that transactional release. And because sex was so prevalent in that relationship. And so at the end of March, or in the middle of March of 2020, I had just gone back from Mexico, and I had a whirlwind of a trip there, just with partying and stuff like that. And I actually saw this TikTok talking about faith, and I was I don't know, something just kind of hit me, and I was I kind of want to see what faith is, because this lifestyle I'm living sucks. I hate it. I am this transaction of sex. I can't do it anymore. I am dependent on sex. I'm dependent on porn. I'm dependent on boys. I'm dependent on getting drunk. I've tried everything. Let me just try God. And so I texted this boy saying hey, I kind of want to just take a step back from having sex. I still want to see you and stuff, but I don't want to have sex for a bit. And he was that's all you're good for. I don't want you if you're not giving me that, you and all this. And that's when I also saw the signs of porn is it's so addictive, and it's so transactional, and I want it when I want it, and if I don't get it, I'm leaving. And so after that, I was completely shattered, as you would be for saying those things, and I was completely broken. And so I was okay, I guess I'll give God a try. And so I kind of gave God an ultimatum, but oh well. I gave him an ultimatum. I was hey God, if you're real, if you exist, change my life and in 2 weeks, and if you don't, I'm going back. And I woke up the next day and nothing really happened, but then the days going up, I was okay, I'll pray, okay, I'll read my Bible, okay, I'll try this faith thing out to the fullest, I'll go to church, I'll do whatever you want, but for 2 weeks. And then like by the end of 2 weeks, by the end of like 4 days, I was like captivated by God's love and just captivated by him embracing me and like not letting me go. And so at the beginning, I struggled a lot with like lust and porn because that was so much of my life. And I knew that it wasn't in God's design because I saw the person that I was with it, and then I'm seeing the person that I'm not, or that I am without it. And so just walking through faith, I still struggle with it. Like there's definitely been times of temptation and times of like struggling. But immediately I got an accountability partner just to help me journey along my faith and porn and stuff like that. I definitely like, it's weird for me because a lot of people come to Christ and they still watch porn and they still like dive into that. And I like am blessed that I haven't done that and I haven't like watched that since. But I know there's a lot of Christians who still do and still do struggle with that, and like they're still loved, they're still a daughter or son of a king, like. And so I personally can't relate in that regard, but I can relate in like I have struggled and I have had to put boundaries. I have had to cut people out of my life because they've impacted my walk with God and made me want to fall into that. But kind of God has just been healing me this past like 2 years or so, like a year and a half of just like my false form of like love and relationships, and just like even with people and friends, and like letting people in now, like not putting up that guard, and kind of trusting that like the Lord's healing me, and that I'm not always going to feel like sex is a transaction. I'm not always going to view people as like a transaction. I'm not going to always like want to leave when someone like doesn't want to have sex with me, because that's also a big thing, is like I only felt loved when I like was having sex, because that's what porn like kind of shifted my mind to do. So when I did get into a relationship, I was like, why don't you love me? And because he was Christian, we weren't doing that. And like, why don't you love me? And he's like, well, this isn't what love is. And so kind of just that's been shaped and molded and crafted, and the Lord's been shaping me in that regard. But it's been a cool journey that I'm still on. So
beautiful. And I think journey's the right word, isn't it? And you know, incredible that you've seen so much change in your life and what God's done, and you've learned to believe that he loves you, which is one of the hardest things I think for us, is to believe that God isn't actually hating on us or judging us or angry with us, but actually he loves us, and yes, he wants to see change in our lives, but he ultimately loves us, and it doesn't matter what mistakes we've made or what we've done, whether we even thought it was a mistake at the time or not. You know, he wants to give us a new start, and he wants to give us forgiveness. And so it's so beautiful to hear that. And as you rightly say, there's lots of people. I know people who, you know, gone to God with a porn addiction or a porn problem and felt like they've just seen an immediate change. And for others, it continues to be a battle, and maybe they begin to find help actually as they take courage in seeking help and accountability. And what I know is it's almost impossible to do it on your own. To quit porn on your own just is almost impossible. We need others, and I believe we need God as well to take us on that journey, like you say. And so would really encourage, if you're watching now and you're kind of going, well, that sounds all right for you, Katyy, I'm really glad that you've managed to get out of this, but I'm still battling here. There is help. I totally believe there is help, and part of what we do with Naked Truth is try and just give you that support and that help. So make sure you check us out, and there's so many resources we've got available, but you know, maybe just take a look at Naked Truth Project either on YouTube or just on the web, and you'll see that we've got some advice, we've got groups, we've got courses, we've got all sorts of things that you can look at to quit porn if that's something that you need to do. Final thing, just as we come to a close now, Katyy, thanks so much for your time. You're one of 40 or so speakers that we've got lined up for an event called the P Word Conference. It's an event that we are doing online, so people can access from anywhere in the world. It's a 72-hour event, and we're going to have kind of live sessions probably every 2 hours. So it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, there should be something you can watch live, as well as obviously catch up and watch things that have gone on in other time zones. But it's aimed at churches, because we know that there are so many churches that are struggling to talk about porn. It is a difficult and taboo subject for lots of churches, for youth workers, for church leaders. Just as a Christian who goes to a church who's actively talking about porn, have you got any advice for youth workers or church leaders in terms of just kind of what do you think the church needs to be doing when it comes to this topic of pornography?
I think vulnerability sparks vulnerability. So
Right.
as you are a youth leader, as you're a pastor, like talking about your own struggles, talking about, because I know even with my platform, and like I meet someone that has seen me on TikTok and they immediately come up to me and tell me their whole entire like porn journey and sex life and everything like that. And I'm like, whoa, I just met you. But it's kind of cool because it's like vulnerability. They've seen me be vulnerable. And so they feel like they can be vulnerable back to me. And so I think my number one tip would be like open that conversation, not just by asking them like, hey, have you like, do you struggle with porn? But asking them like, but first saying, hey, I actually have struggled with porn, or like, hey, I know when I was a teenager, this was a big thing in my life, or something like that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
having that open conversation and not just asking them, but opening up also so that they feel like they can open up as well. And also like not just directing it towards boys, but directing it towards girls too, because I feel like a lot of churches
Yeah, absolutely.
don't really understand that teenage girls go through it as well. Because even when I went to youth group, like it was very much directed towards boys, but I was the one in the room struggling with it as well. And I'm like, okay, it's just a boy thing. And so just opening up that conversation, if you're like a girl youth leader, like open it up with your girls, like talk about it. I do all the time with my youth girls, and some of them haven't struggled and some of them have. But just that open vulnerability is, I think, vital.
So good. Thank you, Katyy. That's such good advice. And at the conference, we've got a group of different people from kind of, professional counselors and therapists who can really help churches understand how this is a problem, but also how you can walk with and support people, all the way through to people like yourself who are actually just very much talking to young people. But this is whether you're wanting to help adults or young people. If you're a parent, if you're a partner of a porn user and you're looking for support for yourself, or someone, all those things are going to be the sort of things that we're going to be talking about at this event. So you definitely want to grab yourself a ticket. Just go to pwordconference.com and you can find out more there. Katyy, it's been really great to hear from you. Thank you so much. How can people find you on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube? What's the best way of people being able to see what you're saying and doing?
Yeah, well, first, thanks so much for having me. Like, it's been so fun and like to talk about this. It's amazing. So thank you for doing everything you do. To find me, it's katyy.patyy with 2 Y's on each side for Instagram and TikTok, and then just katyy.patyy on YouTube. And those are all my social medias.
Great. And seriously, if you're a parent, and you're thinking, how do I get my teenage daughter to check out some of Katyy's stuff without it just seeming really weird? Oh, I think you should take a look at this person. I'd just say, just go for it. just seriously, just kind of go. Yeah, just say, oh, I heard about this girl on TikTok. She sounds amazing. And you might get a roll of the eyes at the time from your teenager going, why is my mum or dad recommending someone on TikTok? That's so embarrassing. But actually, who knows? Maybe they'll check out Katie and get to listen to some of the stuff she's saying, because it's just so good to hear it from a peer or someone who's like a little bit older but has been there. And so we'd really recommend that, you know, you encourage, if you are a parent, your teenagers to maybe check out what Katie's saying. So that's it from us for now. Thanks so much for joining us live or watching back if that's what you've been doing. And thanks again, Katie, for being involved. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Yeah. Thanks so much.